Hi there, hope you had a wonderful weekend and welcome to the second and I think final episode in our exploration of the concept of SiPho or signal phobias. If you didn't watch the episode from a week ago where I introduced this concept to our wider community, do check it out. I think this will make much more sense if you watch the first one. And today we're going to talk about what I call the orders, different orders of SiPho, the primary order, secondary order, third order of SiPho, etc. And then we're going to talk about true exposure, because we know that when we expose ourselves to what we have imagined being dangerous, we can actually see that it wasn't, right? And then we're going to look at an interesting question of if we can overdo this, can we become so zen that we won't recognize a real threat? And yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, let's jump in and just super quick kind of summary of the first episode. A signal is basically anything we humans become consciously aware of, a thought, an emotion, any piece of information, a smell, a sound, anything like that. And phobia, we define here as when trying to avoid something that scared us at some point, just amplify the fear. We're trying to avoid it, and then we're kind of telling the brain that, oh, by avoiding, we're telling the brain that this really is something dangerous. We're amplifying the fear, become more scared, and et cetera, et cetera. And this can become a growing struggle in our life. That's kind of our definition of phobia. And then putting these together and seeing that we can be scared of actually any type of signal, theoretically at least. Then we can see that all of our inner struggles can be viewed as signal phobias. That was kind of the summary of the first episode. Now let's dive into some new things. Okay, we're going to look at these different orders of SiPho, and I think this is super interesting, and I hope it has some practical value as well. And I want to before we actually jump into it, I want to say that this is actually intended to simplify. When you start listening to this, it can seem like, oh, this is so complicated, but you'll see that this is actually, I think, a huge simplification at the end of the day. So anyways, let's look at the phobia of clowns, when we're really scared of clowns, but they're actually harmful, right? So when we have a phobia of clowns, I'm going to ask you, what is it that we truly want to get away from? What is it that we truly are trying to escape, right? And this can seem like almost a silly question. Like, I'm afraid of clowns. Of course, I want to get away from clowns. Duh. But if we didn't experience fear, then we would not try to get away from those clowns at all. So what we're trying to escape, what we're trying to get away from actually is the emotion of fear. It is not the clown. Our emotions are designed for us to take action. So it can look like, oh, I'm scared of the clown. I want to get away from the clown. But it is actually the emotion that triggers fight or flight. So that's what we want to get away from, no matter what we're scared of. If it's a real or perceived threat, it's the emotion that makes us do things. That's what we want to get away from. If we're being hit by a bus, we have that fear and we want to get away from the fear. And when we jump out of the way, we we feel really great. And it's the emotion that makes us do things. It's actually not so much the bus. Anyways, the point here is that what we're trying to avoid always is the emotion, not the item, if you will, in this case, the clown. So any phobia really comes from an attempt to escape an emotion, and we can actually have a fear of an emotion because emotions are signals, right? So in the context of the clown again, what we're trying to escape is the fear. And when we're trying to do, when we're repeatedly trying to escape it, we're teaching our brain that, oh, this emotion is not good. I have to try to get away from it. So what's happening is actually we're getting a fear of fear. At the root of this, we actually have fear of a signal, and the signal is fear. So we're scared of being scared, right? And so the first order SiPho at the core level, the bottom layer, the fundamental level, a first order SiPho is a fear of an emotion. And I listed some of the core emotions: like sadness, fear, anger, and disgust. And if you add these four together plus happiness, those are considered by many the five core emotions. And I didn't put happiness here because theoretically, maybe, like you said, I said you can be scared of anything, but realistically, can we ever be scared of a pleasant emotion like happiness? I don't think that can be an ongoing struggle unless we're in some kind of bizarre circumstance where we truly don't want to be happy, right? We can experience this in the micro level where we like in a very serious meeting and we start becoming happy for some reason. We're kind of giggly and we try to, we're like, no, I cannot laugh, and it's become amplified, right? So we can see it in the micro. I don't know in the macro if that's a real thing, but a first order SiPho is really a fear of an emotion. Okay. Now, a second order SiPho is the fear of a result of an emotion. All right. Now, let's look at some example. Or let's actually, before we look at example, let me ask you this. What can the emotion fear produce? What are some things that can come from the emotion fear, right? Think about it for a second. Here I have listed some things. We can become more alert, more awake. We can have palpitations. We can have small pupils. We can notice that. Lack of appetite. We can have jerks. We can have like a whole list of things can come from the emotion of fear. And, knowing this, we can see that insomnia is actually, by, this classification, insomnia is a second order signal phobia, because insomnia is when we're scared of being awake, and being awake is a consequence of fear. Okay, so this is a second order phobia. Now, signal phobia, I should say. Now we also have the third order, and the third order SiPho is the fear of a result of an emotion. And that result, by the way, can be imagined or real. Now, to illustrate, like, what do I mean by this? Well, here's an example. I am so scared that I won't function if I don't sleep tonight, in the context of insomnia, right? So what this person is scared of is the result of an emotion. The like brain fog, let's say, we imagine is from not sleeping, and which is like partly it is for sure from not sleeping, partly it's from the struggle as well, right? But again, what we're scared of is real, whether that's truly 100% real or not. We're scared of something that is a product of being scared, or of being awake, which then comes from being scared, right? So this is a third order SiPho, if you will. And now this can be quite confusing, but you'll see as we go along how this is actually a simplification, and things become very, very simple when we get to the bottom of it. So what we're going to talk about next is like what I call true exposure. So we know that actually this is widely known that when we have a phobia, it is actually exposing ourselves to what we have been scared of that helps. And by nature, phobia is when we have like we're scared of something that isn't realistically dangerous to us, right? So if we look at this again, like, I'm so scared that I won't function if I don't sleep, right? We identify this fear of, let's say, brain fog, and we somehow see that, this is this like third order SiPho. I'm scared of something, but realistically, that's not dangerous. Actually, having brain fog, not functioning, it's not a real danger. It's not threatening to me at all. And we know that, okay, when we're facing imagined threats, then it's being willing to expose ourselves to them. That's teaching our brain that there is no real danger, and that ultimately leads to where we want to be. So when we go from there and we say like, instead of like trying desperately to kind of avoid this brain fog, which just feeds the fear and everything else that creates it, I can be kind to myself. I can be like, I'm going to try my best, even if I'm tired tomorrow, I have this brain fog, I'm going to be willing to experience that. I'm just going to do my best. I'm not going to try to like avoid something that actually isn't dangerous, right? Something like that. What are we truly exposing ourselves to in this scenario, right? Well, you may say, of course, this is obvious. Like, I'm just exposing myself to this fear I've had of having brain fog, right? And that's true. We are exposing ourselves to this fear of not functioning, which is the third order SiPho. But when we're facing this fear, we are also actually facing the underlying fear, which is the fear of not sleeping. When we're saying like, okay, if I have brain fog tomorrow, that's okay. We're sort of also saying, okay, that it's okay if I don't sleep that much, right? Because that comes from that fear, right? But even that goes further, because we're also we're also facing the fear underlying the fear of not sleeping, which is the second order phobia. So we're actually indirectly facing the root of this, the fear of fear, if this is a true exposure, like if you truly mean it, right? And so, putting this into context, if you look at this one, somebody's saying, like, theoretically saying, I've been looking at clowns, and even I put on a clown suit. I've done all this exposure, but I'm still afraid. We see that the intent of this type of exposure here, the intent became to avoid clowns. So it wasn't really true exposure. The exposure hasn't happened at the first order. This person who was like putting on a clown suit to avoid the fear of clowns was actually still in the avoidance mode. They were not. There was no exposure to the first order, to the fear of fear that is always there in the at the deepest layer. Or we say this, like, I've been watching Netflix all night and I still can't sleep. What am I going to do? The intent with watching Netflix when we're awake at night, for somebody who's been here, like, and heard me talk about befriending wakefulness, right? The intent became to avoid being awake at night, which is, again, like, at the root, like the first order here was not, we were not exposed to the kind of the first order SiPho in this example, right? And so another way of contextualizing this is like what we teach a lot about, like, befriending wakefulness, going towards like being okay with being awake at night when we have been afraid of being awake at night, right? This is actually a camouflaged way of exposing ourselves to the root emotion, which is anxiety, right? The wakefulness is just a result of the fact that we were frazzled, and we were like going like, okay, if I'm awake at night, that's okay. I'm willing to face that. We're actually indirectly facing the underlying, fear where it came from, which is the fear of fear, actually, right? That's the root cause of everything. So, and here's where it comes to simplification. Like, when we see this, we realize that every like struggle we're in, every like inner struggle we're in, can be reduced to its first order SiPho, which is going to be the fear of fear, or perhaps like the fear of sadness or fear of anger, but it's going to be the fear of an emotion that's going to be at the base layer. And when we see this, I think it helps so much because we can truly see through everything. We can see through everything and see at the core of this, I'm afraid of an emotion. I'm afraid of an emotion. And we know that emotions are completely harmless. They are just signals. They're just signals. And when we see this and we're like, okay, I'm going to be willing to expose myself to the signal, which is at the core of everything, then things get so much easier because, then we're truly teaching ourselves that, that there's nothing to be afraid of. The emotions cannot hurt us. And when the brain understands this, then things can become so much easier. Things become so much peaceful because the whole struggle just fades away. But now, a little twist here. This comes up now and then. Like, can we overdo this exposure? Like, a lot of people are like, well, if I kind of let my guard down, can't something bad happen? Can't I miss something? Can't I, like, if I teach myself that it's okay to be scared, won't I kind of like completely like short circuit like the safety mechanisms in my brain and things of that nature? And one of our guests here, Sierra, she actually talked in one of the episodes where she joined the channel of how, she was awakened at night because there was actually a fire in her building, right? And she said there was no pondering or like deliberation. She immediately knew exactly what to do, right? Get out, call the fire alarm, like whatever. And here's the point, that no matter how much inner work we do, heart work we do, we cannot change like the wiring in our brain at the core level, right? The safety mechanisms in our brain, our amygdala, etc. It's going to be there to save us from any real threats, right? No matter how much we work on this inner work towards the perceived threats, the mechanisms will always be there towards to protect us from a real threat. So no matter how zen we are, we will run when a bus is about to hit us. We will jump and run away. I think there's no reason to like keep our guards up because we know what if we miss a real threat, right? In this context, like, again, of course, this is not medical advice. All this teaching applies to imagined threats. So if you're kind of like, for some reason, you're like thinking, oh, I'm not sure. Maybe I have a medical issue and I want to miss that. Then of course you should talk to your doctor. Anybody who's worried about their health, talk to your doctor. But when it comes to this, when we see that I am in fact struggling because of this, like what I recognize here, this fear of emotions, then I think this truly applies. So some new teaching here. Hope it makes sense. It's sort of new, so I'm really looking forward to some comments. That helps so much in clarifying ideas and improving teachings. And if you are finding, by the way, as I always say, if you're finding the teaching here to lead you where you want to be, where you feel free, and there are no struggles, no inner struggles, then that is wonderful, and please share it with us. We would be so happy to hear that. But if you're finding that it is tricky and you would like some guidance and support on your path to leaving these struggles, then please head over to the Sleep Coach School and check out our coaching options. If you decide to join one of our programs, we would be glad to see you on the other side. That said, I will end here for today. Again, let me know how it sounded in the comment section, and we shall go from there. Hope to see you back soon. Bye for now.